How can I retire at 60 years old with $200,000 saved for retirement? That's what we're going to look at today on the Your Financial EKG YouTube channel. I've got Larry, and Larry is a truck driver. He lives outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and his back, his knees, his neck, his elbows, his body is sore, and he wants to retire. Now, I wore this jersey because Larry is a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, so I thought, hey, Larry, I'll wear my Tampa Bay Buccaneers jersey just for you. Fire the cannons. Now, let's go through his scenario. Now, Larry is 60. He has $200,000 saved for retirement. We're going to look at two different scenarios here on the board, and then we're going to get into the software to go through a more detailed analysis. But the board's going to give us the foundation to his plan. Can he retire? Can I retire? And the reason I want to use $200,000, it's not just because that's what Larry has saved for retirement, but it's because what data shows us that many of you have saved for retirement at 60 as well. Let me show you what I mean by that. If you look at the average save for retirement at 60, I'm going to look at two different surveys. We're going to look at the Federal Reserve's survey, and we're going to look at Vanguard. So the average save for retirement at 60, according to the Federal Reserve, is $223,000. According to Vanguard, it's $256,000. Now, many of you will say to me, hey, Drew, Vanguard's numbers don't matter because that's only the money at Vanguard. I have accounts outside of Vanguard. I have accounts at Fidelity and Schwab and E-Trade. That's great. So that's why we use the Federal Reserve, because the Fed's looking at all retirement savings. So in reality, the average person at 60 years old has about $223,000 saved for retirement. The median is even scarier. The median saved for retirement at 60, according to the Federal Reserve, is $134,000. According to Vanguard, it's $89,700. So there's a big difference between the median and the average. Now, the median is a better indicator of where Americans are at today. So that is why I am here. I am the people's financial advisor, right? Just like The Rock, the people's champion, I am the people's financial advisor because I want to help you get to retirement. I don't believe that you have to have $1, $2, $3, $4, $5 million to retire. All those commercials where people are laying on beaches or they're canoeing down some kind of river or they're getting Mai Tais at the poolside, that's not what your retirement's going to look like. Now, you may want that, but I just talked to a lady in Kentucky who said, hey, Drew, I want to retire. I want to do some ministry work and I want to be with my grandkids. I don't care if I travel. I'm not looking to go all over the world. This is what my dream for retirement is. And yours might be like that too. Larry's dream for retirement is not to travel. He's a truck driver. He's been on the road his entire life. You know what Larry wants to do? Larry wants to rest. So let's get into that today. So Larry's 60 years old and currently his current expenses are $2,500. So that's what his expenses are today, $2,500. Now, from a projection standpoint, we're going to use two different projections. We're going to use 4% as a rate of return. Now, the reason I'm going to use 4%, now I'll use anywhere between 4 to 6% when it comes to a rate of return when we're calculating out what's this $200,000 going to make in the market. Now, the reason I'm going to use 4% is because Larry is more conservative. Larry, when I ask him the question, hey, Larry, what's more important to you right now in your life, growth or protection? He said protection. He is more about protecting his money. He's worked hard for his money. He is in a hard job and he's worked hard for it. So we're going to use 4% as our rate of return. We're going to use 3% as our inflation rate. Now, the reason we're going to use 3% is because that's the 109-year average. I'm not going to look at 2022 or 2023 or 2024 and just say, oh, inflation's at 6%. That's what we're going to calculate out for the rest of your life. That doesn't make sense. We're going to use 3%. So what we're going to do is we're going to need, for the next 2 years, we're going to need $2,500 a month with inflation coming out of this $200,000 for his retirement income. Are you checking with me? You following along? So after 2 years, taking $200,000 or $2,500 a month for retirement income out of the $200,000, he would have $179,496. So you see what I did there? This money's invested. He needs this for income. Now, after 2 years or 24 months of payments, we're at $179,496. Now, his expenses have grown in those 2 years, right? Just because of inflation, right? The cost of raspberries today. Listen, I got 3 kids. I know what the cost of everything is, especially fruit, because my kids love fruit, which is a good thing. It's a blessing. But we also homeschool. So my kids are home all the time, which means the refrigerator door is basically what cools our house because it's open all the time. So inflation is out there. So we're going to look at his expenses going from $2,500 a month to $2,702. That's just a 3% inflation rate. Now, Social Security is going to kick on. It's going to be $1,300 a month. So that's 70% of his full retirement benefit. Now, if he were to take Social Security at 67, he would get 100% of his full retirement benefit. If he was to wait and take Social Security at 70, he would get 124% of his full retirement benefit. But because we're claiming at 62, we're going to get 70% of our full retirement benefit. Now, he can claim at 62, 63, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, 69, or 70. Doesn't make sense to claim after 70. So we're going to claim at 62 because what we want to do is right now we are draining our accounts for retirement income. We need to put a plug in that. We need to have some form of income coming in that's going to help protect our retirement income cash flow. So that's why we're going to start Social Security, which means expenses minus Social Security, we still have to take out $1,400 a month from this $200,000, which is now $179 for daily living. And after 10 years, he has $1,555 left in his account, and boom, he is out of money. And so we do not like this plan. This is on the board. Now, there's a lot of other factors that we need to factor in, and we're going to do that in the software. So if you're watching this, make sure you hang on. So here's where we're at. Now, keep in mind, here's some things we got to think about too. Now, I wanted to show you that first. He has a home. It's worth $325,000 and it's paid off. He has no debt. Okay, he's lived in this house for 30 years. It's worth about $325,000. There is no debt. So that's a good thing. So he could do a reverse mortgage. He could sell the house. There's not really a good option to sell it and to move into a less costly house at this point. So it's something that he has to hold on to. And we'll look at that more in detail in the software, okay? Now, we have talked about part-time work. Now, he does have specific licensing, right? Or because he's a truck driver, but he does not want to be a truck driver. He does not want to drive for part-time work because his body hurts. He actually said to me, I would rather work at like a Home Depot, a Lowe's, where I can stand up and move around rather than sitting sedentary. So from part-time work, that might be something we think about. So if we were to insert some part-time work into here, this scenario might last a little longer. And I'm not telling Larry, hey, retire and start working somewhere else. Maybe you take 12 to 24 months off. Maybe you start working part-time at 62. Now, if he's working part-time, we know he's not going to reach the threshold for Social Security, the maximum you can make while you're earning Social Security. If you're under the age of 67 or your full retirement age, and you earned income while taking Social Security, if you make over $20,000 and that goes up every year, Social Security will claw back money, basically $1 for every $2 you earn over and above that $20,000. So we want to make sure if we're doing part-time work, which is pretty simple, we're going to keep it below $20,000 a year, okay? And we need to look at what I call the 316 principle. The 316 principle is really simple. We basically need 3 forms of income, 1 complete financial plan, looking at 6 major areas in his retirement life. So we're going to look at that. We're looking at the income right now. We're going to look at the plan on the software. All right, so let's lower expenses for a second and just see what happens, because that's going to be another easy way. What I don't want to do is overcomplicate this or over-risk this plan. I don't even know if over-risk is a good word, but if we were to increase his rate of return, that's a way that we could extend out this plan. But I can't guarantee what the market's going to do. We could also lower inflation projections, but I don't think that's a good idea too. So we're going to keep our projections as is. We're going to lower expenses. Okay. And I'm just showing this on the board just to see how we can extend this out. And then, like I said, we're going to get into some more details. So we've got $200,000, $2,000 to our expenses. So we've lowered that from $2,500 to $2,000. Okay, 4% still our rate of return and 3% still our inflation rate. Now, 60 to 62, 200,000, taking out $2,000 a month goes to $196,890. Okay, so we've got more. Look at this. By taking out $6,000 a year or $12,000 over 2 years, we've got about $16,000 more in our portfolio at 62. Now our expenses have gone to $2,162 from 2000. Here's Social Security kicking on. So all we need out of our portfolio is $862 with inflation, which is less, right? It's almost it's about 2/3 of $1,400, right? It's the half of that, $700, so add another $162. So we're tracking better and extending the life of this money out. The question becomes when we talk to Larry as we're having this conversation is, can you lose $500 a month? That's why you want to have a budget. Like, where's my money going? 62, we got 196,890. At 72, we've got 135,202, and we're out of money at 81 years old. Again, we're still tracking along with this house. It's worth $325,000. We're giving that a 1% rate of return in the software because I don't know what property is going to look like in Pennsylvania over the next 10, 20, 30 years. So that could be something to where we do what they call a HECM, a home equity conversion mortgage, or an old school term is a reverse mortgage. So we could do a HECM on this or reverse mortgage to get some more income into the plan. That's not something that we necessarily are going to go through in detail today, but that's something that we could do. If we throw in some part-time work into there, that's obviously going to help. So that's, can I retire, or how can I retire? So we've really got to be cognizant of what our spending is. When are we going to claim Social Security? And what are the projections that we're using out when we're calculating, can I retire? Now, let's dig into the software. I've got $200,000 saved for retirement. I'm 60 years old. How can I retire? Now, we just did it on the board. We're going to go into the software today, and I want to show you how Larry can retire. Now, let's look at this. So we've got Larry. Now, Larry is a truck driver, and the reason we are retiring is because his body is wearing down, and his back, his knees, his ankles, his neck, everything's hurting. And so we're going to look at retiring at right now, basically right now. So we're going to click retired on this. Now, his Social Security benefits at 62 would be $1,300. Now, keep in mind, you can't take Social Security before 62 unless you're on disability or if it's a special circumstance. But for Larry, we're going to take Social Security at 62. It would be $1,300 a month, and there are no pensions. So it's just Social Security is the only guaranteed income that he would have. Now, from an asset standpoint, we've got two main assets. We got $200,000 in a traditional IRA, which we rolled over from his 401k. So he was working, he had a 401k. We rolled that over to TD Ameritrade, and he's got $25,000 in the bank. So we have total assets of $225,000. We're going to use $200,000 for our retirement income. We're leaving this $25,000 in the bank as a safety net. This is his emergency fund. So we don't want to do anything to disrupt his emergency money. Now, he does have a home. It's worth $325,000, not $315,000, and it's fully paid for. So there is no debt on this home. So he does not making any mortgage payments. He has no auto loan debt or anything like that. He's mainly driven a truck. He has a car that's older that doesn't need a whole lot of work because it hasn't been driven a bunch. He's been driving his work truck for the most part. Now, from a rate of return standpoint, we're going to use a 4% rate of return. 2% is going to be the money in the market, in the money in the bank, and 4% is going to be the money in the market. And the reason I want to use 4% is just because it's a lower rate of return and it's more conservative. That's what we used on the board. We used 4%. We're going to continue with that in the software, and we're going to look at how can I retire and do we need to make adjustments? Now, if we go to his expenses, this is where it starts to get a little dicey, and this is where you really need to pay attention. So his current monthly expenses are $2,500. Those are his baseline expenses, $2,500. We're using inflation of 3.27%. Now, keep in mind, he doesn't have any mortgages. He doesn't have any auto loans. We don't have any credit card debt. So we don't have any variable payments, okay? We just have this $2,500. We are going to use 3.27% as our inflation rate. That's the 109-year average, and that's why we're going to use that. But if you had a mortgage, it's really important for you to understand. Let's say that Larry had a mortgage. Let's capitalize M. My English teacher in Kentucky would not be happy with me. And let's say it was a $500 mortgage. 500 is too low. Let's say it's a $1,000 mortgage. So we essentially have $3,500 in monthly expenses. But you see this average inflation rate here? It says 3.27. Let me ask you a question. Does your mortgage have an inflationary inflation on the payment? No, the only time you add more to your mortgage is if you're adding more to your principal, you're making extra payments. So we would put 0 as his inflation, and we'd also end this at a certain time, right? He's not going to pay his mortgage out in perpetuity. So let's say it lasted for another 10 years. So we'd say July of 33. And so what this would do is, you see how his average inflation rate has come down to 2.34%. We've lowered his inflationary rate, but we've also, this expense falls off in the year 2033. So when you're doing your financial plan, when you're doing the calculations for your overall investment retirement plan, we call that a Your Financial EKG. You want to make sure you have your inflationary numbers correct. All right, so let's get this back to 2,500 there. There we go, 3.27%. Let's save that. Perfect. All right. So you might be wondering too, if you're catching this, I'm wearing a Bucks jersey. Larry is a huge Pittsburgh Steelers fan. And so I wore a Bucks jersey in honor of him, even though it's AFC, NFC. I'm still wearing it in honor of him because he loves the NFL. Now, from a retirement standpoint, this is where we need to focus. I call this the 316 principle. 316 principle is really simple. When you go into retirement, you want to have, if possible, 3 forms of income. Okay. Social Security, a guaranteed source of income, maybe like a pension, an annuity payment, maybe some rental property, and then your variable income. That's going to come from the market. That's going to help make up your expenses. That's the 3 in 316. You also want to have one comprehensive financial plan. You don't want to have financial plans in Excel and financial plans in New Retirement and financial plans in Empower. You want to have one comprehensive financial plan that covers 6 specific areas. The first specific area is your income. The second is going to be your assets, your expenses, your taxes, your pre-retirement, which is your contributions, and your retirement. You want to have those 6 areas covered because everything that goes on in your retirement is covered inside of those 6 areas. Rates of return, that's inside those 6 areas. Inflation, inside those 6 areas. Taxes, tax planning, estate planning, long-term care. What am I going to do? All that's covered inside of those 6 areas. I call that the 316 principle, which reminds me of a really good verse, John 3:16, right? For God so loved us that he gave us Jesus. All right. So when we look at retirement, here we go. We're 60 years old. We'll have $214,000 basically. We're looking at this as a half a year type thing. And here's Social Security kicking on at 62, $1,300 a month. And essentially, we basically run out of money at 73. Now, why is that? Well, a couple different things. First of all, we're pulling more out of the portfolio than the portfolio can sustain. You can see how the portfolio is just gradually going down. And the software tells us what our rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall is 11.87%. That's not sustainable. What that basically says is this portfolio needs to average 11.87% per year to make this last. Well, for Larry, we've got to make some adjustments. He doesn't want to work as a truck driver anymore because his body's breaking down. So we had the conversation. We talked about this on the board. Would you work part-time, Larry? And he said, yes, I would work part-time. I would actually rather move around than sit sedentary. So what we can do is I can say, okay, let's come back over here. We're going to retire from being a truck driver. So let's retire you from a truck driving. And let's just say you have part-time work. And let's say your gross annual salary working part-time is $15,000. And we'll start this, let's not start it when we retire. Let's start this in January of 2024. So let's take 6 months off. And we're going to do this, what do you think? 7, 10 years? So let's do this till we're 70. And let's see if that helps. That's what we're going to try to look at. And we'll do a 1% wage increase on this. We'll be real conservative on our wage increase. So what we're saying is we're going to take this 15,000 and we're going to get a 1% increase per year based on just wage growth increases and things like that. So now let's just go back to retirement. Let's see what happens. Okay, so we went from 73, we went to 79. Now look, rate of return needed to avoid a shortfall is now 9.14. So we've brought that down by 2%. Remember, we don't necessarily want to be super aggressive in this portfolio. The guy's got $225,000 saved for retirement. I don't want to see that go down $40,000 because we're trying to be too aggressive. I want to try to keep that. I always equate that Space Mountain versus the Walt Disney World Railroad. Okay. I got 3 kids. They love Disney World. Space Mountain, you walk on the ride. If you've never ridden it, it's in the dark. It's a roller coaster. It goes 35 miles an hour, which is fairly fast in the dark.
Feels a lot faster because it's in the dark. Disney knows how to work with your senses, right? They also know how to take money out of your pocketbook. But you ride it and you're going, you know you're getting off, but you don't know when. That's being in the market. 37 years old, that's what I want to do. I want to be on Space Mountain. He needs to transition off of Space Mountain into the Walt Disney World Railroad. It needs to be more consistent. That doesn't mean that all of his money's on the railroad tracks, but it means the majority is so we can work more in we want to be like this, not like this. Okay? That's what we're looking at. Okay, so let's go back. So we're going to work a little bit part-time. Now we can go to expenses and I can say, hey, Larry, can you adjust any of these expenses? And I said, well, what if you take out $100 a month? And you're like, $100? That doesn't make a difference. Well, let's see. What's $100 do? That got him 2 years. So taking out $100 a month, I'm sure you could find $100 a month. If you really wanted to retire, if it really made a difference, you could find $100. That got him to 81. Now, here's the thing I want you to look at. At 81, let's go to 75. At 75, his house is now worth $344,801. He's got $146,900 in spendable assets. Here's what we could do. We could do a reverse mortgage on this money, this 341 right here. What if we did a reverse mortgage, started getting $1,000 a month out of this, or $500 a month? Or what if we took out a lump sum of cash? So we can build that into the plan. So we can say, okay, in the year 2038, let's do that real quick. Let's go heck'em. Let's say in the year 2038, we get an extra $500 a month. So the year 2038. And again, I don't know what reverse mortgage rules are going to be in the year 2038, but I'm just looking at it for now. Let's do this for life, because with reverse mortgages, you can usually do 3 types of income. You can take start at like a lifetime income now. You can take a lump sum, or you can have a line of credit. And so let's just do the lifetime income. And it's non-taxable, right? So it's tax-free, and it's going to be to pay expenses. Well, $500 a month, doing this monthly, doesn't get us too far. So we know right off the bat that if we do a reverse mortgage or a HECM, we're going to need more money coming out of his portfolio. So let's go 341. Let's look at 65%. Let's divide that by 5. So we could essentially get, let's say, $900 a month at that age. What does that do for us? It gets us 3 extra years. Okay. So maybe the HECM is not something we look at. Maybe we start earmarking the house because it's not generating enough income for us to make this last. Now we audible, right? Omaha. I guess that's Peyton Manning, not Tom Brady, but Omaha this. And we're going to look at this protected asset becoming our long-term care solution, right? Because he's a single guy. He's going to need help down the road. He doesn't want to burden his kids. So this could be our long-term care solution. Now we've got to extend the life of our income. We got to figure that out. So I can go back and I'll say, hey, what if we drop our expenses by $200? What if we go to $2,300? We go to retirement, and now we've got to 82. So let's just drop this to $2,000. Let's look at this on a $2,000 a month. Again, we've got inflation of 3.27%. We go to retirement, and we're back to 89 and 90. Feeling a lot better about this plan at that point, and our rate of return's down to 6.07%. Now, keep in mind, obviously, his expenses right now are $2,500 a month. So he's running out of money at 79 with part-time work. If we go back to income, if he doesn't retire, so let's retire that job. If he decides he's making $65,000 a year right now, what if he works until 62? I'm not telling him to do this because he doesn't like his job. I mean, he likes driving, but his body's breaking down. But if we go an extra 2 years, really, that doesn't get him much. He's out at 73. It's, without the part-time work, he's out at 76 working another 2 years. So in Larry's case, it doesn't make sense to retire at 62. Now, if he could find an admin job in his truck job, with his company, maybe that would be better for him, or that's something. But we've got to look at these different options. But if he wants to completely get away from it, we've got to have some part-time work in there. And we probably are going to have to lower these expenses so that his money will last forever. Okay. Now, listen, I'm not trying to not make this work for Larry, but I don't have any pixie dust. That's about an hour and a half down the road. Tinkerbell's got that at Disney World. What we have to look at is when we're building out that 316 plan, that Your Financial EKG, we have got to make sure that we cover all of our bases. And sometimes the truth hurts, right? The honest answers I give are, hey, Larry, this is what you've got to do. And this is how we can make it work. But if it doesn't work, then we've got to pivot and do some other things. Okay. So I hope this video has helped. God bless. Bye-bye.